Good evening, everyone. Tonight's Saturday. We're having our English session. And we have 3 people so far tuned in on the internet, and hopefully the mic is fixed. Last time the mic was using the wrong mic. So I'll just give a short talk and then we'll start meditating. The meditation we're practicing is a very specific Buddhist meditation. There are many types of Buddhist meditation. And it's complicated by the fact that we take our meditation from a wide diversity of texts. But if we return back to those texts which claim to be the things the Buddha said during his life, we see a real pattern in the Buddha's teaching. So in all traditions of Buddhism, we have a built-up tradition of meditation techniques. In the tradition that I follow, they have 40 different techniques just for quieting your mind. 40 different meditation objects, and then it gets very complicated. In every meditation tradition, in every Buddhist tradition, they have countless, or a great diversity of meditation techniques. But when we go back to these original texts, we have some basic fundamentals in terms of how we can construct a truly Buddhist meditation practice. And what we see in the old teaching, in the original teachings or those earlier teachings, is that the Buddha was very very clear about the specific meditation practice we call mindfulness. He was always stressing this practice, that whereas he would teach to individual people different things, when he came right out and said, what is the path of practice that one should undertake in order to become free from suffering, he always came back to the practice of mindfulness, and specifically the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So the Buddha didn't just say, be mindful, because when we hear be mindful and we hear people teaching mindfulness meditation, we still don't get a clear idea of how to practice, and so mindfulness meditation becomes quite varied in its forms, in the way we practice it. But the Buddha was not so general. He was quite specific in terms of how you practice mindfulness. So we don't need to create our own meditation practice. It's quite useful when we go back to these ancient texts and really practice something that we can be sure, or more or less sure, was, if not taught by the Buddha, because we have no way of knowing for sure whether this was the Buddha's teaching or not. At any rate, it's quite clear that this is an ancient technique around the time that the Buddha was said to live, and by all external appearances, this is what the Buddha taught. So we have this teaching called the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and it's always important for us to come back to this. This is really the basis of the Buddha's meditation practice. how we know this is because not only did the Buddha teach it, and not only did he stress that this practice and repeatedly encourage people to practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness, but he also gave clear instruction as to the benefits and the purpose and the real nature of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, in terms of calling it the Ekayana Magga. And the Ekayana Magga has been variously translated as the direct path, even the only way, the one way, a path that only goes in one direction. It's the sure path. It has many meanings. But the Buddha never said this about any other meditation technique. He was very specific about the 4 foundations of mindfulness, that this is the direct way to become free from suffering. And he said specifically that this is the direct way for 5 goals, 5 aims that we hope to achieve. So first of all, before I go into the aims of mindfulness meditation, just to explain briefly for those who don't know, what are the 4 foundations of mindfulness? The 4 foundations of mindfulness simply mean those 4 groups of objects that are valid to use in the development of mindfulness. When we're trying to create this clear awareness, this bare understanding of things as they are, we can use any one of these 4 objects. And basically it's one way of describing reality, or categorizing reality, breaking it up into parts to make it easy to acknowledge, easy to catch, to label. When something arises, we know where it fits in, and so we know how to acknowledge it. And the first one is body, and this refers to any movement of the body or any posture of the body. When we're sitting, this is part of the body. When we bend, this is part of the body. When we stand up, this is part of the body. When our belly rises, this is the body. Even when we feel hot or cold, this is part of the body. When we walk, when we eat, when we talk, when we go to the washroom, when we brush our teeth, and so on. When we eat food, this is all part of the body. This is all comes under the body. So being aware of these things is the first and quite important meditation practice. And we can do this even when we're not meditating. The second is the feelings, when we're mindful of happy feelings, unhappy feelings, pleasant sensations, unpleasant sensations, calm feelings, peaceful feelings. The third one is the mind, being aware and recognizing thoughts for what they are. When we're distracted, when our minds are focused, when we have good thoughts or bad thoughts, thinking about the past or future, just knowing that it's a thought. And the fourth one is the Dhammas, or the rest of the stuff, those other things that are going to come up in the practice. Dhamma really means the teaching of the Buddha, but here the Buddha used this as a category to put together everything else that's going to come up, or to lead one further on the path towards the Dhamma, to incorporate the teaching into one's practice. So first we have the teaching on the hindrances. This is a very important teaching that we're going to have to use in our observation of reality. These are things that are going to get in the way of our practice. So when we have liking or disliking, drowsiness, distraction, doubt, all of these we have to be very clear to see for what they are, and to not follow after, to not encourage and to not develop. Next one is the senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking, being mindful of these as well. And so on. There are many teachings that will come in useful and we can develop as we practice. These four are the four foundations. Mindfulness is just the recognition of things as they are. Is the bare recognition of things as they are. So people ask, I know when I feel pain, I know that I'm feeling pain. Why do I have to say to myself, pain, pain, pain? Why do I have to practice meditation? Why can't I just sit there and know that I'm in pain? And the point is that when you know that you're in pain, there's an idea that I am in pain and it's mine. And so we attach to it as being a bad thing, as being a problem for me. If it's yours, then you have a problem. If pain really were yours, then you would have a problem. But since the pain is not yours, there's no reason to understand it in this way. It's something that arises and ceases. It's not yours in any way, shape, or form. We have to change our minds. We have to actually adjust our reaction, our understanding of the object, so that we simply see it for what it is. And this is what meditation is for. It's the adjusting of the mind, straightening of the mind. The mind is not straight by nature. It's crooked. We're always trying to get away or weasel our way out of things so that we don't have to suffer, so that we don't have to deal with difficult situations. Our mind is not straight. We have to work to straighten it. So this is why we say to ourselves, pain, pain, pain. It's to teach ourselves that it's just pain. So mindfulness is a bare recognition, recognizing something just for what it is. Not just recognizing it and then going on and liking or disliking it, but stopping yourself at the bare awareness, the simple knowledge of the object for what it is. This is what it means to be mindful. So why did the Buddha say we should practice these four things, or this practice? The Buddha said when you walk, you should know I'm walking. This is walking. When we say walking, walking, we remind ourselves that we're walking. It's that it's just walking. It's not good, it's not bad, and not letting our minds wander, not letting our minds make more of anything than what it is. When we feel a pain, we know that there's a pain. And when we're thinking, we know that we're thinking. We know it for what it is. Why did the Buddha say that we have to do this? The Buddha said, Pati sati mataya anisito javiharati. We dwell simply knowing something, simply being mindful, specifically of the object for what it is. Why do we do this? The Buddha said it leads to 5 benefits, or 5 goals, the 5 goals of Buddhism, the 5 aims of the Buddhist teaching. And these are, first of all, it purifies the mind. This is really the biggest reason why we practice meditation. This is, I would say, the defining point of Buddhism. And I would say Hinduism talks something about purifying the mind, and that's possibly because of the intertwined nature between the Buddhist teaching and Hinduism growing up together. They're like an older and a younger brother, older and younger siblings. So they share some of the same qualities, but the defining factor of Buddhism is the purification of the mind. That's the core of Buddhism. And the Buddha went into great detail about what are mental impurities, how to practice to purify the mind, and what is required to be considered pure of mind. It's not just that we sit quietly and we don't get angry or greedy. It's that we fully understand everything around of us so that we will never become angry or greedy again. So that we will never see things as more than what they are. We'll never mistake things for being other than what they are. And so this is the most important reason for us to practice mindfulness. And this is what we have to agree with to practice Buddhism. To say that we're Buddhist, we're practicing Buddhist teaching, we have to get our minds around this idea of the purity of mind. This is what we're striving for. We're not going to sit there just to feel happy for a while. We're not coming to practice to gain magical powers or read people's minds or see heaven, see hell, fly through the air or whatever. We're not practicing to see special sights. I read something today. These people were asking this meditation teacher, a monk, what's wrong with hallucinogenic drugs? He said that when we take these drugs, it heightens our visions. We actually see things clearer, and it allows us to gain these visions even more profoundly. And the monk turned and looked at them and said, "You don't need drugs to hallucinate. You're hallucinating already." And I think that separates what we're doing from what the ordinary person who's never had any instruction in Buddhism practices when they go to meditate. They're just looking to hallucinate, and it's because they hallucinate already. They don't see things for what they are. They don't understand that this is meaningless, that whatever we gain in our meditation we're just going to lose again. And the exception being wisdom. Because once we understand that this is true, when whatever we gain we lose, then that wisdom is something we'll never lose. We'll never cling to anything. We'll be able to see things for what they are. So, meditation practice purifies the mind. This is the most important. Because when we're saying to ourselves, pain, 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 we're not upset about the pain. When we're upset and we say to ourselves, upset, 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 we're not upset about the upset. Wherever we catch ourselves, whatever our mind is doing right now, we stop it. We change the mind from this clinging, running around in circles, this cycle of suffering. We break free from the cycle. This is why we meditate. And the truth is, once your mind is pure, you don't need anything else. There's 4 more benefits, but really they're meaningless once your mind is pure, because whatever I'm going to say next has to come from the purity of the mind. There's no positive thing that can't be had with the purity of the mind. When your mind is pure, you're happy, you're at peace, you're free. You never fall back into suffering. But the question remains, if we just said you become pure, it still doesn't make much sense. I mean, if that were the only thing that came from the practice, you just become pure, but you still have all sorts of suffering and so on. We have to explain what happens when you become pure, so there are 4 other benefits. It's not that purity isn't enough, it's just that when you become pure, there's more to it than that. The second one is that you do away with all sorts of mental distress, all sorts of mental sicknesses. The greatest thing about meditation is that it heals the mind. It's like medication. Medication heals the body, meditation heals the mind. It's a parallel. And so, people who suffer from depression, people who suffer from anxiety, people who suffer from sadness, people who suffer from anger and so on, hatred, Whatever mental sickness, people will even take drugs or kill themselves because of these mental sicknesses. Depression is a mental illness. I had a friend once who told me she was clinically depressed. I got very upset at her when she told me she was clinically depressed. Because all that means is she went to a clinic and they told her she was depressed. Of course, doctors want to tell you you're clinically depressed because then suddenly it's a sickness. But it's always a sickness. We all have sickness. Sickness just means not well. If you're a little bit sick, you're still sick. You're sick a little bit. It's still a sickness. Getting anger, according to Buddhism, is a sickness. But here we're talking about all of the labels that we put on our mental defilements, the sicknesses, depression. People are depressed and they take medicine for it. They'll kill themselves for it. People are insomniac and so they'll take medication for it. They'll destroy themselves by stressing over their stress and not being able to sleep. And meditation clears all of this up. It may take a long time, and it's certainly a gradual process. But I guarantee if you practice meditation, simply seeing things for what they are, and really get this concept of seeing things just for what they are, even just in a week or 2 weeks, if you're practicing a little bit every day, you'll see a profound change in your outlook. You'll still get stressed, you'll still get depressed, but it's no longer a monster. It's still an enemy, it's still an adversary, but it's no longer your master. You're no longer a slave to the emotion. You just know that you're depressed and you let it go. Let it be, as best you can. And you get better and better at this, and you realize that it's only a matter of time before you can make yourself understand that this depression, this stress, this anxiety, this sadness disappears. If you stick with it, if you understand this, that we're not going to change our minds overnight, but we're going to change the way we look at things overnight. We're going to change our path overnight. So that, whereas before we were always making our problems worse, now we're going to start making them better. And they won't be better overnight, but we've changed our entire way of looking at things and our paths from becoming more sick to becoming well. The third benefit gets a little bit more specific. Specifically speaking, meditation, according to the Buddha, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, leads to the end of physical and mental suffering. So, not only talking about the gross mental sicknesses, illnesses, all suffering is done away with, according to Buddha, through this meditation practice. Whether it be physical suffering or mental suffering. And you can verify this on a basic level by yourself through the meditation practice. I was mentioning to one of the meditators today about his shoulders. He said his shoulders had pain, and I was explaining to him, acknowledge it will go away. And he really didn't, I don't think, he didn't, wasn't really, sure, understand it, because it's something new. And then I said, have you ever been to a masseuse? And he said, yes. I said, does it hurt? And he said, yes. I said, this is just like that. Because we don't want to sit through the pain, right? We feel when pain comes in our shoulders, something's wrong. I have to sit against the wall. Maybe I have to stop meditating. Maybe it's too long. But it's an amazing thing that when you sit through it, if you just watch the pain and let yourself be with it, you're able to change your bodily makeup. You're able to change your physical composition, the way your muscles work. Your muscles heal themselves in a way. Because the reason why we tense up, why we're in pain, is because we keep tensing our muscles. Through our stress, we keep shifting them. We don't notice it. And we're always tensing and tensing and tensing. And so we're building up physical tension, and also mental discontent, mental aversion. This is bad, shifting, this is worse, shifting, this is terrible, shifting, until it becomes a real problem. Once we work that out, many of the pains in our bodies disappear and never come back. That's not to say we're not going to feel pain, but it's really a whole other playing field. Obviously, once we have no mental defilements or anger in our minds, no judgments in our minds, then there's no mental suffering. But physical suffering can be overcome as well through the practice. And ultimately, when we pass away, according to Buddhist doctrine, a person who is still clinging will have to be born again. They continue on. They're carried on by their clinging. There's still fuel left to create further existence. But a person without clinging will not come back to be born. And so, technically speaking, it is clearly a way to overcome physical suffering, because in the end we don't have to come back and live this life again and again and again and suffer again and again and again. The fourth benefit, the fourth aim of the practice, is to attain the right path. So the Buddha said that the four foundations of mindfulness is the way to find the right path, the right method or means of living one's life. And this is really a bold statement. One of the things people don't like about the translation of Ekayana Magga as the only way was that they see that there are many ways always to the same goal. Just as there are many paths to the same city or so on, many roads leading to the same destination. And there was a Burmese monk who said, yes, well, there's many roads, but they're all roads. You can't drive a car through the ditch and expect to get to your destination. And I think this is a good explanation of how we can justify saying mindfulness is the right path, it's the right way to live your life. Because we're not telling you that being a monk is the right way to live your life, or being a Buddhist is the right way to live your life. But we are saying that being mindful is the right way to live your life. Seeing things for what they are is the right way to live your life. This is a profound teaching, I think. It's throwing out the idea that you have to become a monk or you have to become this or that to live your life correctly. Some people will say, if you're not in our group, you're living your life wrong and you'll go to hell. Once you subscribe to our teachings, you will go to heaven. Just by saying, agreeing with what we teach, being a part of our group, identifying yourself as this or that. In Buddhism, that's not the case. The Buddha didn't say, this is the right way to live your life, that's the right way to live your life. He said mindfulness is the right way to live your life. And you can be anything you want. You can be a lawyer, a doctor, a businessman, you can be a king, or a president, you can be a politician, whatever. If you're mindful, you're living your life correctly. And so, yes, it's being specific and saying this is the right way and otherwise is the wrong way. But it's also being very general and saying anyhow you want to live your life, just be mindful. It's the right way to live our life because then we see everything clearly. When people talk to us, we see clearly what's going on in their minds. When they say nasty things to us, we see there's something going on in their minds rather than being offended and upset by it. We're not afraid of people. We're not worried about them. And we're not when people try to assert themselves, power tripping over us or so on, we don't feel threatened. We don't feel any need to accommodate ourselves to other people. So we're able to live our lives in a much more harmonious way We're not slaves to our emotions, and we're not slaves to other people. And as a result, we can meet with great success in business, in our society, in our families. We're able to be a great support for people rather than being a burden. And so however we live our lives, we do it successfully. And the fifth benefit is that meditation leads to freedom or release. And this is Nirvana. I think probably the best translation of Nirvana I can think of is release. Because freedom it's often translated as freedom or explained as being freedom. But freedom is like there was something else oppressing you or holding you captive. Release means it has a double meaning. Because in Buddhism, you let go. You're released from your attachment. We're like holding on to ourselves. We're only imprisoned by our own attachment. And I always say it's like a bird clinging to the side of the cliff. It's like you have a bird clinging to the side of the cliff, afraid that it's going to fall. This is how we are as human beings. We're like a bird on the side of the cliff, holding on for dear life, because if it lets go, it thinks it's going to fall to its death. And meditation is letting go, and realizing that you're not going to fall, you're going to fly. Realizing that when we let go of things, we're not going to lose everything, we're going to gain everything. When we don't worry anymore, when we don't stress over things, everything comes to us. We have these examples of the Buddha in his past lives, how he gave up his kingdom, gave up his riches, gave up everything, and it all came back to him, just like a boomerang. It was like giving everything away, and he was even more rich and more powerful than before. And you might think this is just a fairy tale, or just a means of indoctrinating people in the art of giving. But if you try it, you'll see it's 100% spot on true. My students, they were talking about, we're going to give this big donation in September in Thailand. We're going to give 84 sets of robes. Costs a little bit over $9,000. And they were saying, why don't we save up money? If we do this, I want to help you, but we'd rather wait and help you build a monastery, and we've only got limited funds. And I said, the limited funds come from our worry, come from our stress. I said, this world is full of money. It's full of riches. When you open up, when you open yourselves up to the generosity, when your heart is wide, open wide, you'll only gain. You only stand to gain when you give. And so we don't have to worry about the future or building a monastery or so on. We give now. We do good things now. And more comes to us than ever before. The more we give up, the more we have. If only the world would understand this, there would be no poverty, there would be no famine, there would be no problems in the world. If people understood how to share, it's like what they teach you in kindergarten, no? If only we knew how to share. But here more specifically, giving up. Not just sharing things in the sense that we still like them and we just want, we're going to give up some of it, but we want some for ourselves. Giving up means giving up everything. It's not a physical thing, it's not material giving up. It's giving up our attachments to things, not needing things to be other than what they are. And in the end, giving up the whole universe, giving up everything. Freeing ourselves from the fire of suffering. And we're like sitting with fire all around us. The Buddha said the eye is on fire, the ear is on fire, the nose is on fire, the tongue is on fire. It's on fire with craving, it's on fire with likes and dislikes. And it's on fire with impermanence, with the changes, because nothing lasts. But the thing about fire is if you don't, what we learned as a kid is if you don't touch it, it doesn't burn you. You have to make the movement. If you don't grab onto the fire, it can't burn you. If you don't come into contact with it, with you, it can't make you suffer. And this is what the Buddhist meaning of the word suffering. Buddha said, everything in the world is suffering. Everything is suffering, basically. Everything that arises is suffering. And that doesn't mean that sitting here is seeing, hearing, smelling is a painful thing. What he meant is it's fire. When you grab it, when you hold on to it, when you need it, when you want it, like it, hate it, so on. It can only make you suffer. There's nothing you can do with it that's going to make you happy. There's no adjustments you can make to the universe that are going to make it better. It's the adjusting, the messing, the forcing, the controlling that causes all the problems for us and for the world. And so Nirvana is the real goal here. To let go of the fire. And to fly free like a bird, rather than clinging on, worried that we're going to fall. So that's the teaching for tonight. A little bit more extended, but that's a fairly important topic. I hope we've been able to broadcast that, and hopefully it'll be up on YouTube as well. So now we'll get back to our meditation practice. First, mindful prostration, then walking, and then sitting.